Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 6:30, so we shall begin this evening's meeting of the Cabinet. First of all, can I welcome our new Cabinet member, Councillor Mrs. Reid, for her first meeting. I hope it's going to be a meeting she can enjoy. Secondly, I have no idea what a football score is, so I can't help you on that front at this precise moment, but no doubt somebody will tell us if we need to know. There are clearly no apologies for absence. This is the Cabinet. Declarations of interest.
Yes, Leader, I'd like to declare an interest in paper E, so when that comes up, I'll leave the room.
Thank you very much.
And Leader, I should declare a non-pecuniary interest in paper D.
Okay, thank you very much. Let us just, by the way, two other points which I've forgotten to do, points of housekeeping. Fire alarms, fire evacuation proceedings for this evening's meetings. There are no fire alarms scheduled. Therefore, if the fire alarm does sound, we have to evacuate the building immediately. The fire exits are at either end of this room. We go down the stairs and then we all meet again in War Memorial Park, presumably so we can be counted. This meeting is being webcast, so that means that speakers will be recorded and their contributions will be recorded on the webcast, therefore available on the internet at a later date. It is working, I presume, so I can't see anything from here. What? Is it behind me? Oh, right, okay. And could I ask everybody, members of the public, other councillors, cabinet members and officers, to make sure that their phones are turned to silent and don't vibrate or do anything else untoward during the course of the meeting. Thank you very much. Put mine away so and stop people looking at them as well. I should be listening to other things. Right. We have no petitions, we have no urgent matters. The minutes of the meeting of the 29th of April. Members, are you happy that I sign those minutes as being accurate record? Agreed? I'll do that later on then. Okay. I'm going to, for the sake of time, and because there's so many people who wish to speak on one particular paper, which is paper 10, the Basingstoke Town Football Club, and an update on the proposal to relocate. I'm going to take that item first. And I have so you can go and watch the football if you like. I'm sure you'll be absolutely riveted if you go and watch that. Right, I have I'm going to take, first of all, members of the public as speakers, and then visiting members as speakers. We're actually operating for the first time tonight under the new Cabinet rules. It doesn't really make much difference to this, other than that members have the opportunity to speak for rather longer than members of the public. For those of you who read the new constitution before going to bed at night, or whilst in bed at night, that is the fact. Anyway, the time that you have will appear on the front here, provided I can remember to operate the thing correctly, and I will ask all, since we have so many people wishing to speak tonight, I am going to try and stick as rigidly as I possibly can to the timing, just so that we can speed the thing through. Can I also just remind people that what we're dealing with tonight is a proposal which is, we're not to, on the land and its usage, this is not a planning committee meeting, and therefore planning issues are not the subject for debate this evening. And if people do start to raise planning issues, much as I would like you to air them, for the sake of being concentrated on the specific subject that we have in hand, I will intervene at that particular stage. So, can I ask the first speaker from the public to come forward, which is Mr. Razak, and whilst you're doing so, if you'd like to come forward to the desk at the bottom there, it seems an awfully long way away tonight, for some reason. I don't know why you've gone right the way down the end there, but never mind. Good evening. And I'm going to ask Councillor Isaac to introduce the paper first, and then I will come to you in a minute or so to ask you for your comments. Councillor Isaac, could you put your microphone on?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, the report before Cabinet is an update on proposals and a decision taken in March 2012, as the Leader has said, acting in our capacity as landowner, and involves proposed part sale of our ownership, the ownership of our part, the sale of our part ownership of the existing stadium land and land at Old Common Road, which we own, which is proposed for the new stadium. We're being asked to agree the legal terms that have been negotiated by officers with Basingstoke Town Football Club and its development partner to enable the relocation of the football club to a new stadium. As you've referred, this is to be subject to a separate planning process and scrutiny, but is also to be subject to further public consultation. Public consultation is important because of the time that's elapsed since the decision was taken back in 2012, the significance of the proposals, and also the loss of public open space that would be involved in building the new stadium. The original decision in 2012 was supported by the EPP committee, but there were clear reservations about loss of public open space. Hence, it is important that there is now proper public consultation. The existing site is inadequate, and without the funds generated by a sale of that land for retail development, the resources would not be there for a new stadium. Other sites have been examined, but I think the general conclusion is, and this is one supported certainly by Basingstoke Town Football Club, is that the Old Common Road site is next to the Hilton Hotel is the most suitable in terms of vehicular access, distance from housing and proximity to central Basingstoke and its public transport facilities. But these are all planning issues. I'm satisfied that the officers have negotiated terms that are financially attractive and provide for ongoing community benefits and access rights, including Amuga artificial turf training areas, drop-off parking for Costello School, and safeguards in case of future financial problems on the part of the club. So on the basis of that, I'm recommending that this report goes forward so that we can then go to the next stage, which would be a public consultation, which would take the form of consulting people across the borough and also those in the local wards that would be most directly affected and have and are most likely to be users of the open space.
Thank you very much, Councillor Isaac. Then, Mr. Razak, you have the floor for 2 minutes. I shall press my magic button and hopefully it will all work. So could you like to press your button, which is the long one on that? That's it, and you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a step that we have been awaiting for over 12 years. It's been culminating the whole dreams and the ambition of the football club. I'd like to say that throughout the 12 years, we have worked very, very closely with the council. I'd like to thank the council for all their guidance. The site selection was done in conjunction with the council by offering us a number of sites to go and visit. Our belief is outside the public consultation, we have considered everything very carefully. And I'd like to say this is a stadium, as a community stadium for the town of Basingstoke, to benefit Basingstoke town going forward. There are no impact on taxpayers, but advantages, and there's nothing but to raise the profile of Basingstoke. As a person who has his business in Basingstoke for 30 years, I have been involved with the football club for over 20 odd years. I'm probably not the sort of a football background. I decided to do it as part of my commitment, corporate governance to the community. And I'd like to make sure that the football will be sustainable for the next 100 years. It's been going for over 100 years, beyond my time, as you can see. With this, I really urge you to support it and to put the interest of Basingstoke above any other interests, political or otherwise, because this is for Basingstoke. Thank you. Did you stop me there?
No, you had another 30 seconds.
Oh, I thought you stopped me.
Would you like your last 30 seconds?
Yeah, well, with that, it's becoming to speak at a time when England is playing football. I just like, I hope we can win today. To show that we got 3 points before we leave. The important thing is to thank everyone and to really appreciate all the support that we have got to get this far. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Right, next we have Mr. David Knight. Mr. Knight, and then following Mr. Knight it will be Mr. Atkin. At least I assume it's a Mr. Atkin.
Yes.
Yes, good. Okay. Mr. Knight, you have 2 minutes, as before, and I will give you a call at 30 seconds when you get that far.
Thank you very much, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Knight. I'm the company secretary and also been a supporter of the club for over 30 odd years. Burton Albion, Crawley Town, Wycombe Wanderers were just 3 clubs that at one time were at the same level as Basingstoke Town are at present. All were playing to crowds in the low hundreds, and all then moved to purpose-built state-of-the-art grounds at the time, and all have now progressed into the Football League. This significantly raising the profile of those towns nationally. Their old grounds were tired and unable to increase the off-the-field activities that are so important. Basingstoke Town is in a similar position at the moment. Basingstoke is a town bigger in population than all of those I've mentioned. And with the new, even more modern stadium, it can only enhance the chances of progressing both on and off the field. This stadium would be fit for purpose, and with a continually increasing academy and community sections, is the right way for the town to progress, and would also give the town a stadium it needs and deserves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being so succinct. Then Mr. Atkin, if you would like to come forward, and next it will be Dr. Williams, following on.
Could I just correct you? It's actually Atkins, doesn't it?
Atkins, is it? Sorry, that's not what I have on my sheet here, so
Okay.
apologise, it will be changed for the record, I'm sure.
Yes,
Fine, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Lee Atkins. I'm Basingstoke Town Football Club Director. I make this address to you also as a resident of the town for 43 years and as a supporter of the football club for that period of time. I live within a mile of here, but also more importantly, I was a former resident of Mansfield Road, so I'm well aware of what it's like to have a football club right on your doorstep. On a large scale, the change of ground has helped the likes of Southampton and Reading, who enjoy Premiership or have done Premiership success fairly recently. On a smaller scale, it certainly helped the likes of Wycombe and Crawley. And when I talk about help, I'm not talking necessarily about purely helping the football club. I'm talking about helping the town and raise awareness of the town in terms of jobs, the profile, and the community interest generally. You will no doubt hear objections. The reality, in my view, is that the situation is that the dog walkers and picnickers of this area already prefer to use the War Memorial Park and Eastdrop, which are also leisure facilities on the doorstep of the current proposed site. I would also like to say that a town's football club often reflects the health generally of the town itself. Basingstoke is a bright, modern, vibrant town, and that is reflected in the superb facilities that it already has with Down Grange and the Leisure Park and Festival Place. That sadly isn't currently reflected by the
30 seconds.
Football Club. So I would therefore urge you to, I would therefore recommend the project to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So next then Dr. Williams, and then it will be Mr. Dry after Dr. Williams. Good evening, Mr. Dry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Cabinet.
You have 2 minutes.
The stadium is not, as the first speaker said, destined for community use across all sections. It's a football stadium. And I'm answering the report on the basis of that, because the council don't want the stadium should the team go bust. The report is very general and clothed in a legal contract case. As far as I can see, the contentious issues are we have a football club with only about 300 people attending the matches twice a month. Later on in the report, it predicates an increase in attendance to 800, staying in the same league. My contention is, with the history of the club, which I have nothing against the Basingstoke Football Club, it's more likely to stay in the league it is now, and 50% as likely to be relegated as to be promoted. Now, the people who pay at the gate don't provide money enough to sustain the club. So my question is, where is the money coming from?
30 seconds.
It must be benefactors. Chairman and directors of the club may be putting money in. If they pull out, the club could face a serious decline in income. The word insolvency with regard to the club is mentioned several times in the report, so the council is aware it's a high risk. And reading the report, the high risk is that they will go insolvent. Can you give me just 5 seconds,
Could
please?
you just draw to a conclusion? Thank you.
Yes. I want to know far more about the details of the financing. Who's got the money? Who's following the money? Secondly, a 150-year lease at no rent? Why 150 years, for goodness sake? I find that incredible.
I'm afraid it's time now.
Yeah, the only other thing, the consultancy is scheduled to take place in a couple of weeks. That is a serious problem. People will not have time to vote or to prepare, and I think it's been done deliberately at a holiday time. And
Thank you very much, Mr. Stride.
Yeah, thank you.
But
Thank you for your
can I just please make it very clear that the council does not deliberately schedule things like that to try and prejudice the case. And I must rather object to any assertion that we are acting in that sort of way. Can I please then move on to Mr. Warren next, please? Oh, yes, it is Mr. Warren.
So I was in the middle of writing something.
Sorry, Dr. Williams. Dr. Williams. Yes. Sorry, I should have ticked you off. Mr. Dry, it is.
Yeah. Mr. Dry. You've got Peter Warren.
Right, good. I've got down the list. It's because it's gone in a strange order to the one I was using. That's okay. Mr. Warren, it's lovely to have you.
Thank you for having me.
You have 2 minutes.
As you know, my name is Peter Warren. I'm a resident of East Scotland. For many reasons, I object to the proposed construction of the football stadium for BTFC on Basingstoke Common. However, I am constrained to the following. I refer to the written ministerial statement dated the 10th of June 2014 of the Conservative Member of Parliament and Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government, Eric Pickles, with particular reference to the government's plans to increase house building on brownfield land, and I quote, "Councils will play a critical role in bringing forward suitable, unused and previously developed land And he goes on, our aim is to see permissions for building housing in place on more than 90% of suitable brownfield sites by 2020, which could provide 200,000 new homes. Having noted various initiatives to assist local authorities in achieving this aim, the Secretary of State ends his written statement with the following. These measures, taken together with our existing policies and initiatives, will remove obstacles to developing suitable brownfield sites, ensuring that we focus on building the new homes that we need while protecting the green spaces we all value. In view of the coalition government's requirement for a massive increase in the building of homes across the country and the Secretary of State's written statement requiring that at the same time green spaces are protected, I have two questions. One, why is the Camrose site not being developed for desperately needy housing?
30 seconds.
And two, why is it proposed to construct a football stadium in the green space of Basingstoke Common when, as I am reliably informed, there are entirely viable brownfield sites available elsewhere within the boundaries of Basingstoke? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, I should try and get myself out of my quandary here. There was Mr. Warren. Dr. Williams, do we have Dr. Williams? We did. And we've had Mr. Dry.
Do you want me to come again?
No, I think that was more than enough the last time. This is Mr. Dry. Good. I'm sorry, I got very confused there by not ticking the right people off at the right time. Right, so you have 2 minutes as before. Could you put your microphone on? It's the long one there, and I'll get that on and reset the time. There you go.
Firstly, in my formative years, I lived close to a football ground. My old neighbourhood, when home games were being played, became a no-go area for locals due to rowdyism from the supporters. Quite understandably, I do not wish to repeat this experience. Secondly, Eastrop is a quiet central suburb of Basingstoke. Most of the inhabitants are retired or approaching retirement. Most do not kick balls around fields or want to watch the same. They have voted in a poll organised by the local councillors that produced a large majority against this planning application. A far more representative local poll than the much publicised earlier poll sponsored by the council that asked loaded, opaque questions. Thirdly, there will be inevitable disruption in the form of traffic. Everyone drives everywhere nowadays, and the proposed parking is wholly inadequate for modern mobility aspirations. Local streets, however, will be handy for overspill parking. They were never designed for this, but will aid a quick getaway from crowded matches. There will be disruptive noise from both the crowd and from PA systems, and there will be obvious light pollution from the stadium lights. Also, there will be the inevitable sweating of assets, and will no doubt be noisy pop concerts to subsidise the running of the club. My final objection is, I'm also unhappy about the prospect of having a notoriously rowdy Camrose social club as a neighbour. My one and only visit some 6 months ago included me witnessing a fight at the bar and the arrival of police cars and an ambulance. Nice. On another tack, I understand that it was proposed that the existing ground will be redeveloped as retail accommodation. However, local people tell me that the ground was a gift to the town from Viscount Camrose, and that any alternative use would go against the covenants enshrined in this gift. I'd like to end this on a positive note. I have a suggestion for an alternative football ground site on the outskirts, so as not to upset settled communities. The much debated Mendown would provide both amazing parking opportunities and enough room for a new White Hart Lane style stadium.
Thank you very much. Right, and I think we have Lynn Thorne who wishes to speak as well. Good evening.
Good evening.
I think you're on, so you have 2 minutes.
Yeah. I was born and brought up in Basingstoke. In fact, my grandfather used to graze his horses on the common and have to pay per leg. So although that's historical, I know that the common was left to the people of Basingstoke, and it was left for the to be looked after by the trustees of Basingstoke Common, but obviously the legalities of it is that it's now owned by Basingstoke Council. The having looked through the report here, the business case that's been submitted to the council from BTFC seems to be extremely advantageous, or stretching it with the numbers of people in attendance, and to make the revenue to be able to have a stadium of that size, they would have to diversify outside of the football to have concerts, etc. And that means that the stadium would be in operation 7 days a week. And I've also got a question on the council have reserved the right to keep 230 parking spaces for both cars and coaches with unrestricted use 7 days a week. And I was just wondering how they are planning to use those when it is open land which people use.
That's 30 seconds.
Have got a lot of queries on the other areas, but I think that comes down more to the planning area rather than the use of the common land. And as a local, not only to Eastrop, but as born and brought up in Basingstoke and used it from when I lived in other districts of Basingstoke, you use the area quite a lot, not just the Memorial Park, but for the other attractions that are on there. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Right, we now come to the visiting councillors, and the first one of which is Councillor Gavin James. And the next one will be Councillor Parker to follow him, so you're advised. Good evening, Councillor James.
Good evening, Cabinet. I've been here before for the same topic.
Hang on, I've got to control the timer. You have 4 minutes, as you know now.
Oh, you're so kind. You're like a sort of Father Christmas ring.
Well, I do my best. I always succeed.
We've arrived at this point after many years of poor decisions by this administration and indeed previous administrations. It began at Downgrange when, rather than the council ruling out that site, it appears the rugby club did. More recently, the council identified 4 potential sites: Wesley Road, Brighton Hill Playing Fields, the Leisure Park and the Old Common. Rather than this council properly analysing these sites, it abdicated responsibility to the football club. It was the club that chose this site, not the council. It was the club that ruled out the other sites, not the council. We're now looking at a report that, like all Conservative-driven reports, talks about financial consequences and ignores social consequences. Everyone knows results for survey are dictated by the questions you ask. If this report fails to highlight the other risks, I have little confidence that we'll have a balanced survey or a balanced response. A few weeks ago, the Transport Festival, important given the town's Thornycroft heritage, took place on the Memorial Park and was only possible because the entire field was used for parking. The World Party in the Park, at the heart of our festival that we're keen to promote and a celebration of our multiculturalism, can only happen in Eastrop Park as the whole of the Old Common is available for parking. And of course, Basingstoke Live, a regional attraction with more attendees in one weekend than the club gets in 3 seasons. Again, totally dependent on the parking. The report doesn't mention these, and it also doesn't mention alternative locations for those events to be held. So you can only really support at this stage going to public consultation if you're absolutely comfortable that you're prepared to sacrifice these events for the lesser good. It's another mistake. It's clear to this administration that it's managed to make so many mistakes and cause so many delays in order to make a quick decision. The council's lack of progress in taking ownership has cost the club a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort. And I have sympathies. They've put considerable efforts into looking at this site. And the council will also spend a large amount of time and officer time drawing up the leases and agreements that we're talking about tonight. But it looks like at the moment you have 2 choices. You can either go to the public consultation in blind belief that you're only a few more mistakes away from completing the disaster, or you may, painful as it may be, press the reset button. Go back to the start. It's up to the council to decide which site to offer the football club, and we need to look at all the potential sites, like we do for the local plan, like we do for housing. Many of your wards will be in the local plan. You've had sites identified. A long process has been gone through to see the suitability and the impact on neighbouring people. We haven't done the same for this. We've just wedged it through. We haven't looked at the alternatives as a council. So we can go back to the start. We can go out, we can look at all the possible sites, we can identify the most appropriate site for the council and for the residents. And then we can look at all the conflicting and difficult bits involved in that, all the possible consequences of developing, all the problems that will be in the way of every single site, to come out with the best site for the borough, the best site for the residents, and the best site for the club. So tonight, I urge you to not support recommendation 2.1, because I don't believe anyone on this cabinet is willing to tonight stand here and say I'm supporting the proposal without knowing what happens to Basingstoke Live. Because I mean, unless you're assuming that you're quite happy for it to go, unless you're happy to sacrifice it, which would be the assumption made. So if you're not happy or relaxed about Basingstoke Live finishing this year, or the Transport Festival finishing this year, or World Party in the Park finishing this year, if you're not comfortable with that, then you can't possibly support 2.1.
30 seconds.
There seems little point in progressing with 2.2 if you can't support 2.1. And in terms of the survey, there's been no talk about the consequences, and until you know what the consequences are, how can you possibly have a balanced survey? Because the choice on that survey has got to be football club or big events. I can only assume if you go ahead with a survey tonight that this town is decided that it can no longer support major events that can only be held in the current location because that field is available. And that'll be a very disappointing decision for the council to make, but we'll see.
Thank you very much for being exactly to time. Councillor Parker, and then it will be Councillor Ms James. Good evening, Councillor Parker.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Cabinet members. From the day I was first advised of the prospect of the Town Football Club relocating by the Chief Executive, Tony Curtis, and Council Lead Officer, Tim Bosky, I, together with Councillor James, was assured that the old common land was the least preferred option. And yet here we are now with Basingstoke Town Football Club apparently dictating terms on and what council-owned land should be used for. It's truly mystifying. Almost like a subliminal message throughout the Cabinet report, repeatedly it states land at the Old Common Road is Basingstoke Town Football Club favoured site. But as a ward councillor, I was told it is the least preferred site as far as this council is concerned. What happened to change things? Previously, the council had been reviewing the need to expand its burial site capacity, and the old common land site was one of several under consideration. However, in the committee reports, along with other concerns, officers highlighted the importance of the urban green open space enjoyed and valued by residents, and the negative impact to the community of its potential loss. Subsequently, another site was agreed. I wonder what has changed to allow valued green open space to now be allocated for commercial development. I believe it is money. The urban open space has suddenly been downvalued at the prospect of a bounty in the sum of £935,000, which is the amount that it is proposed Basingstoke Town Football Club will pay this council, made possible by this Conservative administration capitulating to their wishes. Studying the report, it is clear our officers are trying their best to warn you of the high-risk strategy. The siren warnings are clearly to be found in the report. For example, Basingstoke Town Football Club's business plan sets out assumptions on increased revenue generated through the provision of a new stadium. The figures, however, are predominantly based upon the assumption of greater attendance at matches, which are simply impossible to verify and would rely on the performance of the football team, which is a complete unknown. Basingstoke Town Football Club business case is only outlined and aspirational. In particular, future operations of the football club is very sensitive to assumptions around attendances and ancillary income, which is not possible to validate. Should Basingstoke Town Football Club become insolvent, the council could be left owning the new stadium and liable for the running costs, which the council does not envisage having the resources to cover. It is anticipated they could be in the region of £50,000 to £100,000 per annum. However, in order to minimise the chance of this happening,
Officers have negotiated that Basingstoke Town Football Club set aside a dowry, but the final size of the dowry for the football club is uncertain, as it is linked to a percentage of the profit from the development. These are your officers' words, not mine. Cabinet members, I would urge you not to proceed with this site for the new location, but retain it as an open green space for the free use and enjoyment of all residents of Basingstoke.
Thank you very much. Now we have Councillor Ms James, and then it will be Councillor Harvey, and then finally it will be Councillor Bierman. Good evening.
Good evening. I want to talk about the consultation that's going to be taking place. I have real concerns about that, and in challenging the Cabinet member making the decision, he's given a commitment to what that consultation will be. I still have concerns, and my question that I asked is, what weight will be given to the local community if we have a large membership of the football club? I believe that will outweigh the number of residents in Riverdene and Eastrop. And so I would like, and I ask you again, what weight will be given to local residents? Because when we put this out as a borough-wide consultation, lots of people will be interested, and of course they will be interested to see a new football stadium. But in relation to how that will impact on local people. So I think it's very important we consider that. I also, and I think it's been picked up again tonight, is, and you said in your presentation tonight, that it was financially attractive. And I think that this administration has to be driven by more than just financially attractive. It's an incredibly attractive piece of open space, and it's very valued, and we've heard tonight from Gavin James who talked about the use of that piece of open space. It's used every Saturday as an overspill car park for the park run. There's lots of times it's used for the circus. There's many times it's used, and I think that as well as a car park, it's a great space. We've got very little urban open space. There's lots of rural open space. I'm sure a lot of you enjoy your rural open spaces, but in the urban area there's very little open space, and we've seen an erosion of that over many years, and we need to protect open space. I also want to talk about the consultation. In the report it talks about the number of responses. I think it says that there was 30 responses. We did a small consultation not so long ago, and it was only in the Riverdene area and Eastrop. We got 50 responses to your 30, to the football club's 30, and they said that 40% of those 30 responses were in favour. Well, out of the 50, 88% of our consultants were opposed to the consultation. So I think that was a very disappointing consultation. And as a resident has already said, this consultation has been taking place over the summer. Many people are thinking about their holidays. This is going to be a very rushed consultation. And it's also that at the same time as doing the consultation, we're going to be signing a legal agreement. Why? Surely we have to ask the residents of this borough what they want, and whether are they prepared to lose this piece of open space. Why would we at the same time be looking to sign a legal agreement? Surely if we actually are committed to consultation, which I don't think this administration is, I don't think we are committed to it, and I don't think we understand the principles of consultation, surely you have to do that piece of work first, and then you may look to sign, and the outcome of that is sign the legal agreements. Why would you do it in parallel? And I also want to talk about...
30 seconds.
I'm not opposed to a new stadium, but I just don't think this is the right site. And I really urge you not to take this decision tonight, because if this goes to planning, it will be lost. We will lose this, and it's too late then. So I urge you not to take the decision. Think again, please. Please protect our open space in the town centre. It is such a valuable piece of open space. Don't let us lose that. Thank you.
And now Councillor Harvey.
I'll just start as orders. The first thing I want to say is that as a town, what we do want is successful sports teams. We want teams such as the ice hockey, the rugby and football. We all want them to be successful. We all want them to have good facilities. No one's arguing that. What we do want is the right sports in the right places, supported by the community. And the one thing we are risking with this decision is disengaging the community from supporting the Basingstoke Town Football Club. And that's the wrong thing to do. I think we are prejudging the consultation by going ahead with legal agreements and moving this forward. And I ask the question, why? What is driving the need to sign all of this off at 90 miles an hour? Is it this site, or is it the other end, the Camrose, where it currently is? Where does this sit? Location is key. This is an open space. It is much valued, and I personally believe that the old Common Road site is wrong, and I oppose it. I totally oppose you putting it there, or anybody proposing to put it there, for all of the reasons others have said this evening. When we did the survey, and others have done their surveys as well, and no doubt it was reflected in theirs as well, the issue of the Memorial Park and the Old Common was so strongly met by residents' views and came across so strongly. Over years, we've eaten away at it with the hotel and other bits that have gone on in development around. This open space is incredibly important to the communities that we all represent in the town area. So as a cabinet, the majority of which don't represent wards in the town, I'm asking you to seriously consider the views of those town members. When we talk about the other end of this, let's talk about the retail park. We're playing with fire here, because when the inspector kicked out the Tesco's application on the Smiths Industries site, he made it very, very clear that out-of-town retail centres were a direct threat to our town centre, and that the Brighton Hill Centre's viability and vitality would be directly impacted by any other retail park thought of outside of the town centre. So are we arrogant enough? Are we pig-headed enough to say, no, we disagree with all of that, and we're going to go ahead anyway with selling our part of that to what would be a retail centre? We have got to be consistent in our planning approach, and there needs to be consultation with those ward members about the future of that site as well. So on balance, the idea of a stadium is a great idea. I don't think people are arguing that. But there's got to be a stadium that people can support, and there has to be a lot more detail that is far more thoroughly thought through and examined in ways that brings people along with you. The detail hasn't been shared, not to the extent that people are satisfied with. This isn't a decision that is ready to proceed tonight, and you should not be proceeding with legal agreements, and in some ways setting it up before we even get the consultation, nor should you be seeking to impose it. I've seen too many projects like this fail because the basics have not been got right. Too many other towns have fought for years to get the stadiums for their football clubs and rugby clubs in the right places, and they have failed because they're making mistakes that I genuinely feel you risk making. Ambition is one thing. Ambition is fine. Aspiration, fine. 30 seconds. But let's listen to what the residents are saying and their concerns, and let's truly think through where we want to put a football stadium in the future. And just think about this, please. If you go ahead with this, and we get as far as planning, there is nothing that's going to stop this, because I guarantee the officers will write a recommendation in approval, which will be guided by the NPPF, and will be guided by all the planning rules. By then, the residents will have lost this, and we'll fight like no one's business to support them, because it's the right thing to do. Time. But you can stop this now and do it in the right way. So that's what I'm asking you to do.
Thank you.
And Councillor Bierman.
Thank you, Leader. I too come here with expressions of concern about the proposals, which I do with great regret, because, like other speakers, I wish to say that I think this is a valuable facility that should be provided somewhere. The question of whether it's here or elsewhere is more a planning issue than what we're looking at tonight. But I am
like others, concerned about the tone that it sets. That if an agreement is put in place before the consultation goes out, the message then to the potential respondents is, oh, well, they've decided anyway, which in effect is what we're saying we're about to do. Just about everything I wanted to say has been said, Chair, so you'd be surprised to hear I'm going to cut my remarks very short. I would just particularly align myself with the two ward members who I think added a few extra dimensions to the debate from their local personal knowledge aspects that I hadn't been particularly aware of, but I think need to really seriously be taken into account. A speaker mentioned money down. I must admit that was something that crossed my mind, where there's a lot of space and one could plan it in from the start. And my final remarks would just be to observe that Mr. Razak is very well known for his success. I think if it moved to a new stadium, it would be successful. I think there's a very good chance of that. It's been compared with Reading and Southampton. If one does make that comparison and looks at the site, it would be very quickly outgrown. So would we be putting something there that in a very short space of time would be a white elephant? So I'd be concerned that it's an improved site as far as the football club's concerned. Forget about the surrounding residents and other locational aspects, but as far as the football club, yes, a very nice site, but for how long would it be ideal if the club is as successful as I'm sure Mr. Razak and the fellow directors and other promoters of this scheme would like to see to be the case. So with that, I just say I have the concerns. I think it's the wrong decision at the wrong time, and I too urge you to restrain from making this particular decision at this particular moment and await at least the public consultation, and make sure that the public consultation is one that brings forth answers that are genuine responses for the town at large, as well as taking into account the impact on the local residents and the neighbourhood. Thank you, Chair. Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Bill. Right, that concludes the public speakers. Councillor Isaac, do you wish to respond on some of the points that have been raised, or all of them?
Thank you, Leader. I've listened very carefully to all the views expressed tonight, and I think what I would like to do now is focus on where there are criticisms of the proposals that have been put forward. We obviously heard from the speakers who are supporting the proposed relocation. We heard from Dr. Williams questioning the financial stability of the club. I can understand why those questions have arisen, but the officers have done good work in looking to ensure that there are safeguards if there are difficulties in the future. He asked about a 150-year lease. Why a 150-year lease? Well, the reason for that is if this is to go ahead and the club is to be able to fund and get investment into a new stadium, it needs a long enough tenure on the land in order to do so. In return for which it is proposed that there would be a payment to the council and its residents of just short of £1 million. He also raised questions about a hurried consultation taking place over 2 weeks. I'm actually determined that it will be a full public consultation. It's vitally important that the people in the borough and locally have an opportunity to put forward their views, and so officers are going to be making many efforts to ensure that we get their views. Mr. Warren made reference to the need for housing on Camrose site. He may be right, I don't know, but that's something that needs to be determined at the planning stage. It's not something I think that we as landowner at this point, or part landowner in terms of the Camrose, need to be concerned about. Mr. Dry was expressing concerns about rowdyism and noise and light pollution and pop concerts. Again, these are issues that are planning issues, and there'll be an opportunity for you to raise those if things get to the point of a planning application. He also mentioned Viscount Camro's covenants. I'm sure that we would not have got as far as we have got in terms of the legalities of this if there was any risk that we were, as a council, offending on those on any historic covenants. Lynn Thorne was made reference to the lands as common. It ceased to be common in 1978 and was when it was acquired by Basingstoke Council, involving the exchange of common land near Old Basing. Councillor James, he says that we're all financially driven and we're ignoring the social consequences. But it's a cornerstone of where we go forward in future of this, that we do consult, as I've said, the public and the residents in the area. So that will be a significant factor in any decision on this. But there would be community benefits if this goes ahead. In my opening remarks, I made comments about the Muga, the artificial training turf, the use of car parking for the school, the Costello school. Again, there was the suggestion, allegation made that we haven't really looked at alternative sites. The officers have worked with the Basingstoke Football Club looking at alternative sites. It's probably a case that putting a new stadium anywhere in and around the town is going to be controversial. But again, that will be tested during the planning phase, whether it is the right site for this. Whether major outdoor events in the borough would in some way be prevented in the future is news to me. I can't imagine that we would find ourselves in a situation where by developing the stadium we were not able to provide the necessary parking. In fact, I think it's sort of a central to the deal with the proposed deal with Basingstoke Town Football Club that we would have use of car parking. So I don't understand that one.
Clarify, the stadium takes up 2/3 of the field. That's only a third left parking.
Yeah, well,
currently all this parking.
Well, okay.
Does that help you?
Thank you. Councillor Parker, his recollection is that this was the least favoured site. But other sites were considered. We have been going through this process for a period of 2 years. We looked at Gresley Road, we looked at the leisure park. We're not capitulating, as been suggested, to Basingstoke Town Football Club's wishes. We're going out to public consultation on this. I keep making that point because it's central. Council.
If it is central and the public consultation is, give us more time, go to the autumn, as some of the officers have suggested might be a good idea.
So I'm sorry, so
You are rushing it through.
you've had your opportunity to comment, and those comments have been taken on board. We're now moving on to Councillor Isaac responding.
Councillor Miss James quite rightly asked about the weight that we would apply to the local community in terms of the public consultation. Yes, there will be appropriate weight given to the views of the local residents. It is important also, if there is a view amongst borough residents that this could be a useful facility for the borough as a whole, that we take account of those. But you bet you, we'll take account of what local residents say. It may be that, there's a view expressed tonight that local residents are going to be universally against this proposal. Let's wait and see. Actually, we don't know. You also raised the question, Councillor James, about implementing the decision. And I think Councillor Harvey also made reference to signing off at 90 miles an hour. It's taken us 2 years to get to this point, and there's a much longer gestation to this, as Mr. Razak made reference.
Taking us 12 years of consultation, not 2 weeks, but since 2000, we're looking at 4 years.
Thank you. I think we'd like to proceed in the normal way if we may.
But again, to remind everyone, we are implementing a decision that was taken in March 2012. But we are making sure the legal officers here have ensured that if, as a result of the public consultation, there was a decision taken that we didn't want to proceed with this, then we are perfectly entitled to do that under the terms of that agreement. Yeah, and just on one final thing, Councillor Harvey, I'm glad to hear that Councillor Harvey wants successful sports teams in Basingstoke. So do we, as an administration. I think, actually, though, there is an element of wanting one's cake and eat it here. These things are difficult to locate, but I'm confident that we can rely on the good judgment of the residents of the borough and the local residents with their views. Probably it.
Good. Then, members, comments, please. Yes? Yeah. Yes, if you wish a supplementary. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
It must be a question, though, not one of your normal...
I know exactly what the rules are.
Well, yes, I know, but you very rarely abide by.
Well, there we go. I've got commonality with you all as a start. Let's just say to Councillor, I want to ask you a question regarding what you've just said. One of the issues I think that many of us face in the town centre and in the town with open space, and I want your view on this really, is let's take this site for example. It is open space, you're right, I appreciate that point, but it is so valued by the community in the way they are and the way they've expressed themselves. And you talk about sports facilities. Look at Down Grange. That's going through the local plan for house building, for God's sake. We've got sports areas and sports facilities that are valued.
Did you have a question relevant to the football?
I am asking for his view. If we're talking about the value of sports facilities, we're building houses on one open area that is regularly used for football and regularly used for amateur sport. And when we're talking about building on a piece of open space that is used by the community, there is no consistency to what we're doing here as an authority. I really appreciate your view because we're looking at contradictions here that concern me greatly in the use of open space in the urban area.
Thank you. Councillor Isaac, would you like to give your view?
Yeah, thank you. We've reached this point, as has been stated at the beginning, as landowner here, and there has been work done on where the football stadium would be best sited. This is where we are at the moment, and yes, it does potentially involve loss of open space, but yes, we are taking we're going to make sure that residents have an opportunity to have their say on that. So I don't see any inconsistencies there at all. And in fact, I'm listening to what has been said tonight. It's quite clear that those that have concerns about this do want to make sure that the public consultation exercise is conducted properly and enough time is given to it, and I take that on board.
Could you please make it a question that's relevant?
Thank you. Councillor Isaac, could you explain to me why we are going out for consultation at the same time as signing a legal agreement? Why do we have to do the two together? Why can't this decision tonight be to consult? Why is there such a rush to sign a legal agreement? I don't quite understand, and I just don't think the residents do. And one of the things, I'm happy to share, the 50 responses that we received said it's a done deal, and they just have total distrust in this process, and I think it shows that in the report. Why do you need to do the two together? Why can't there be, first of all, the decision to consult? We have to be responsible. As a landowner of such a valuable piece of space, we have to be responsible as landowners. And also, if we are going to use a piece of open space the other end, we also have to be responsible as to what we want to use that open space for. And is it responsible as a landowner to be, as it says in this report, using it for retail? I don't think it is, and I think that is irresponsible as landowners.
Right. Again, I'm going to have to repeat myself by saying this has taken us a long time to get to this point. It is an implementation of a decision taken and supported by many councillors, including EPP, back in March 2012. But sensitive as we are to concerns and the fact that it has taken so long and the significance of it, we understand that it is right that we consult on it, and that's what we're doing.
If you could make a question as well, please.
Can Councillor Isaac give myself, local residents and keen Basingstoke Live attendees, the details of the discussions that have been had in public around the risk and the potential future sites of these events, and where these events are going to happen in future years if the stadium goes ahead?
Councillor James, you're always capable of springing surprises, and this is a surprise to me, and so I need to check that out, the impact of that. So I'm not aware that there's going to be this impact.
If you look back at EPP in 2012, I mentioned it there.
Right. Okay.
Right. I'm going to take. Yes, but there are two other hands up as well. So, since we've had a stream of councillors, would you mind waiting, and then we'll have. Would you like to come forward, please? And oh, sorry, you weren't a previous speaker, were you? Therefore, you can't have a supplementary. But I think you were, sir. Yes. Yeah. It is a question. It's not a. Do sit down, because we need to be on the website, but it has to be a question and not a, try not to make it a statement or on behalf of the football club or anything.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak again. I would just like to state that the objections quite often clash with one another. People say that we don't want the football ground because it's loud, noisy and bright. And then on the other hand, they say, well, we don't want the football ground because it might impact on Basingstoke Live. Well, Basingstoke Live is precisely that. And I see that they can both run alongside one another.
A question, please.
I don't have a question, sorry.
Well, you could have done what the rest of them do, just add, do you agree on the end of it? That normally gets away with it.
Well, I'd like to ask Councillor Gavin James that he...
You can't ask that question. All right, okay. It has to be Councillor Honest. I know it's difficult if you've not done this before. I see one more hand. Is it? Two hands. Right. He's being a gentleman and waiting. But it has to be a question. This is the procedure.
I did notice from the earlier questions you asked why the consultation and the legal agreement have to be signed in tandem. You answered the bit on the consultation, but you didn't answer why the legal agreement has to be signed before the consultation has proceeded. Thank you.
Well, I thought I did, because we're actually implementing a decision, and we could proceed with the decision, but as I've said, we're making it conditional on the public consultation process, which is now going forward.
I think we're now members. There's an opportunity. Sorry, Councillor Parker, how can I forget you since you've been standing there so patiently?
Thank you, Chair. Question for the Cabinet member. Would he agree with me and accept that to declare this evening a lack of knowledge of the other events that are carried out on this valuable space of open green land in the urban area indicates a lack of clarity in thinking arriving at this process? It astounds me, and I just would wonder if you might like to explain how it is, at this point in time, close to signing legal agreements, he is able to express that it was a surprise to him, the number of events and the importance of the space.
Well, thank you for putting it that way. I don't think I would characterise it that way. What I said was that certainly there's not a lack of knowledge about the events that are going on. Councillor Gavin James made reference to car parking issues, and as far as I'm concerned, and I have confidence that this is the case as far as the officers are concerned, that there would be car parking provision there, and there wouldn't be an impact on these events. But I've agreed to check it out, so I don't think it's quite to portray me in quite the sort of ignorant way that you have done isn't fair.
Thank you, Councillor. You had your supplementary now. No, and it is Mr. Razak's final contribution, I hope.
There are a number of points about the public consultation versus signing the agreement. I'd like to ask a question. This public consultation was something that is added at the last minute because the decision was taken back in March 2012. So it's not about public consultation. Public consultation is a new idea being concept added to it. So my question is, why are we considering that when the decision was made in March 2012 and we have put all that investment into it?
Right, there is a very straightforward answer to that question. It is a statutory requirement when there is any disposal of public open space that there should be public consultation on that disposal. It's clearly not possible to carry out a public consultation until you have decided to dispose of the land. And that is the state which we're at this particular moment in time. The debate over the extent of public consultation required is fairly restricted. It requires advertising of it, I think, and making local residents aware, but I could get more detail for you on what is required there. Our proposal is to go significantly beyond that so that there is a genuine understanding of the wishes of people in the borough and particularly within the town at large, but also of the local community as well, so that the two sides can be balanced one against the other if they are in contradiction to one another, but they may finish up to be jointly of one opinion or the other. So that's the reason why the consultation was carried out, or has to be carried out, and it's something which is inescapable, whether we like it or not. Right, I think then, if you've finished all those questions, members, we've heard a lot from Councillor Isaac. Councillor Raphael, do you wish to speak? Yes?
Well, if a consultation isn't just a statutory thing, but something that we actually want to hear what residents have got to say, and we want it to be wider than just the local residents, but perhaps to consider the positive, hopefully, effect of a football stadium in this location, if that's what the proposal is, or understand any adverse effect, then a consultation can't take place in 2 weeks. If Leader, you say the consultation is to be wider than just the statutory consideration, that here's a bit of open space, we've all made the decision just in case someone hasn't been aware of it, they might have some rights over it that we've accidentally forgotten or overlooked. If that's the position that we were adopting, that's one thing, but if we're saying that we want to open it out to wider, then that's another. And that seemed to be what you were suggesting, that we want to hear what people have got to say before we make a decision. And if that is what you're saying, then the consultation period ought to be longer than 2 weeks, in my view. That doesn't mean that doesn't necessarily mean that the decision to put the stadium there is at all wrong. But what it does mean is that the very people who've got something to say about it can have their say. And it also bears in mind a number of other things. At least 2 of us weren't members of the cabinet when the original decision was made. And some of the residents who will be affected by this may not have been living there when the original consultation took place. The prospects and hopefully are improving at the football club, so they may have a stronger case for wanting to move there since the original consultation took place. I have to say, apart from the residents' obvious concerns about impact and noise, the only other good point line noted came from Councillor Bierman as to whether the site itself is actually potentially too small, rather than it being the use of open space. The fact that this is a location for a football club in the centre of our borough, which is a town football club, is a very sensible location if it can be made to fit in there, in my view, for the very obvious reason that once the football club moves outside the centre of the town, it then moves into the area where other football clubs exist, and therefore it would potentially be an inappropriate location. I also note that some of the people commentating on this perhaps haven't quite appreciated that the senior team is only part of the package of the football club. It's the junior part, which is actually where much of the good work is done within football clubs. And it goes unnoticed, but it is, as it were, within the shadow of what the senior team does. If the senior team becomes bigger and greater, it attracts more younger folk to join the junior teams. And that has a huge improvement and development to the social fabric of Basingstoke. And that is something that we want to encourage, and that's no doubt one of the main driving forces between wanting to see the club develop and have a central town site, so that people can identify with their town and their club as they grow up and support it. And if people develop an affinity at a young age with a club, they then continue to develop an affinity or grow that affinity as they get older and perhaps find they're less able to play. And it also gives strength to the roots of people living in Basingstoke that they have a club to identify with in the centre of Basingstoke. So I'm very supportive of keeping the club in a central location. It is often part of the perils of living in a central location. You get noise and disturbance. Not something any of us want to visit upon any of us. But you know it's part of the perils of living in a central location. The benefits are your convenience and the close proximity of friends and neighbours that you get on well with, and the commuting aspect of major transport links. But the downside is noise and disturbance. And just as one part of the town might be, as it were, losing that noise and disturbance, another part might have to pick up on it. But putting all of that into the mix, I would like to know that we had consulted, if we are saying that this is something that should be more than just the technical aspect, as you said, Leader, of 2 weeks, just because there might be someone who has some legal right that we've overlooked, and this is something wider. I think we should consult a little wider. I've always found that consultations that go over August are slightly unfortunate because the chances of people missing it are huge. I would ask that the consultation goes up to Friday the 12th of September.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure where the 2 weeks actually ever came from, because there's nothing in the paper that refers to 2 weeks, and there's nothing that, as far as I'm aware, that was ever said it was going to be 2 weeks. All it actually says in the paper is that it was anticipated that the consultation event would take place in July, but that event is only part of the total consultation process. So I think we are somewhat getting a little crossed wires here. Can I just remind members as well that what we are talking about here, what is the decision we're being asked to make this evening? We are being asked to make a decision that the terms which have been negotiated accord with a decision which has already been made. We are not talking about making a decision on where the football club should go. That decision was made 2 years ago in 2012 and was endorsed by the EPP committee and was never called in by anybody. It went through unchallenged. So that decision is made. What we're talking about now is the implementation of that decision being made in accordance with the terms that were laid down, and that is what we have to agree this evening. In terms of I think the suggestion that we go out to September, at least taking the whole of August to pull it together. In any case, it will take probably until the end of August to get the results from the survey information. So we're not likely to have the results of the information until then. So you might as well continue the rest of the consultation going on whilst we're awaiting the results of the statistically valid sample that we're carrying out. There's absolutely no reason to do that. But to bring you back to the decision, because I think we've probably debated this enough, that we're asked to do is to confirm the draft terms of the legal agreements which have been negotiated, and particularly the financial consideration, the key elements of the proposed legal agreement. Bearing in mind all the legal agreement does is to say that provided a certain number of things happen, providing that the planning permission can be obtained on both pieces of ground, and it is not up to us as the landowner to make any prejudgment on what might happen at the planning stage. That would be totally wrong and confusing of the roles of the council. But nothing is transferred, nothing is sold until both pieces of planning are in place, both permissions are in place, and in fact the actual transfer of the land on at Old Common does not actually happen until the ground has been constructed. So we get, if nothing else, we get a football ground before we transfer the land. So that's all within, it's all laid out in here within the terms of the report. It's all concisely put forward. I think some of the other points which have been raised this evening are really essentially planning issues. I think it is worth remembering that what we're talking about here is a parcel of land that is only 1/3 of the area of Old Common, and therefore 2/3 of the area of Old Common remains in place unchanged as a result of this decision. So just bearing in mind that Old Common itself, it consists, I think, of something like 30 acres, 29 acres we're talking about here, a piece less than 1/3 of that. So we just have to put that into perspective.
Where's the third? That's the picture. You can see there, there's the ground, take up most of it, and there's half to take up the rest. There is no third there, it's only just enough space for another.
No, I think that's only referring to the piece of land which is being transferred. That's not the whole common.
The other bit's in Old Basing.
No, I think you'll find that we're talking about Old Common here, and the total package of land. Look, in any case, that is the answer which I would give on that point. I think we've got to a point now when, subject to making sure we can write into the decision notice that the consultation will run through until September, Friday the 12th of September. Are we agreed? Agreed? Good. Thank you very much. Right, we will now move on then to the next item, And again, because we have two speakers on two more papers, I'm going to try and dodge around here on the agenda. Welcome back, Councillor Aegis. We'll have a 2-minute break, I think, while people get glasses of... Could somebody bring me a glass of water? That'd be nice. Right, members, can we gather? Can somebody find the deputy leader? Wherever he's gone. Who's sitting next to you there? Ah, here he comes. Right. Councillor James, you're down to speak, I think, on this paper, because I'm going to we're going to go back and do item 8, revenue and capital outturn. You wanted to speak on this, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to go just giving you advance warning that I'm going back to do that. Right, it's Councillor Isaac again.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'd just like to declare that I'm not supporting Holland tonight. Thank you. I'm glad you understood it. Okay, anyway, the paper before us is the revenue and capital outturn for 2013-14. This report compares the final outturn with the budget and identifies the variances. The revenue outturn for the year shows a net surplus of 1.82 million, which is a positive outcome in terms of a surplus. This is the result of all sorts of things, but includes ongoing savings of over £500,000, and these will be the subject of inclusion in the budget monitoring for 2014/15. It's important that we look for savings wherever possible at a time of an impending structural deficit in our finances from 2016-17 onwards, which arises from all sorts of factors, not least reducing government grants and rising costs. These savings have come about as a result of staffing, IT, curbside recycling, refunds, delayed expenditure on council offices, and other areas of delayed expenditure. Also, as part of the equation is the lower interest that we've been earning on the money that we have in the money markets, and the rents produced by our property portfolio. But these were recognised earlier in the year, and so are not unexpected. As far as capital expenditure is concerned, this was just in excess of £6 million, which was an underspend on the budget of about £680,000. It's pleasing to note that £250,000 was spent from the Affordable Housing Reserve to assist Sentinel to secure 7 units of accommodation, and that money was also spent on parking improvements in South Ham. Also worth noting is the capital receipt we received as a borough of 3.45 million from the sale of Grizzly Road, and the great news there of Network Rail's investment in the town and bringing new jobs. So after that summary, I recommend the paper to Cabinet.
Okay, Karen, just remembering what we're doing here is just making a recommendation to Council. This paper will go forward to Council at the next meeting in July, when we can rehearse all the arguments over again. Councillor James, how nice to see you again.
Councillor Isaac.
I do apologise. In order to prepare Councillor Isaac for that full council, we certainly want to do the same arguments again. I think I should point out that obviously this level of variation from budget is a failure. We always seem to take a view that if you overspend, that's really, really bad news, and we'll have to stick into our reserves, which is why we have them, and if we underspend, it's a great thing. Of course it's not. We've collected this money from the taxpayers to use to support valuable services. In the process of getting to that budget, we've looked at other organisations, CAB, etc., who have approached us, and certainly the community schools, saying, we could do with some help, we could do with some more money. We said, no, we can't afford it, times are hard. So then end up with £1.8 million too much left is a bit of an embarrassment. We've actually failed, because we failed those organisations that we could have actually funded them a bit more, we could have given extra help, we could have given extra assistance. That 1.8 million was collected from the taxpayer and from our investments owned by the taxpayer to make people better, to help people, to make life better for our residents. And it's not, it's going into reserve. I simply mention it because I think it's very important by the time we get to full council, when this is presented, that we have some explanation as to how we got into this state. Why it was that we turned around to all those organisations saying, there's no more money in the bank, we can't help you, and then came out the other end with £1.8 million variation to the revenue budget. Because it's not a good place to be in. It's a little bit embarrassing going back to those organisations saying, we actually did have the money after all, but it's too late now, your organisation's folded. So I'm only talking about the revenue. I haven't looked into the capital, but I think from a revenue point of view, we need to ask ourselves a lot of questions and I'll seek a lot of explanations and have them ready for full council as to why we've ended up with all this money left over, unspent, which could have done a lot of public good.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Isaac, just to respond.
Thank you, Councillor James. I think that part of the explanation here is that ingrained in the culture now in the offices is the seeking of savings, and so yes, that culture is a good one. Now, in terms of budget planning, I'm inclined to agree with you, and officers are fully alert to the point that that these variances are too high, and they're going to be working at this to ensure that that wherever possible, in a very uncertain world where there's lots of moving parts in the running of an organisation such as this, that we don't have that degree of variation. But we have found money where it's been needed for organisations like CAB. So I don't accept the point that you're making here that that we've not been using money because we didn't know it existed.
Right, thank you. Members, any other comments? No? Then since this is going to, I don't really want to go on a great length. Do I? Well, it's not on my list. No, if we have a late list which I haven't got, then I apologise, but it certainly isn't on my list. Oh, this is another list that's turned up here. No, I have no lists. Well, as you're here, you might as well come and speak to us.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Leader. It's very rare we do so. It's nice to... This paper is a very important one, I think, because of what it says about where this authority is and where a significant number of services and issues that our residents are facing overlap. One Conservative councillor said to me recently, we've cut and cut and cut now, and now we are cutting into the bone. And that's a direct quote. If that's the case, and we're now seeing a variance of this level, the question begs, what are we doing on some key projects? When I see in here that we're only spending £9,000 on a pilot project on solar panels, that's it. Just £9,000 on a pilot project this year. And we have this variance. The question begs, what more could we do? When we're only putting, and it's welcome, don't get me wrong, we welcome £37,400 on welfare. That's fine, that's important because there are issues. But when we actually look at the issues residents are facing in terms of the bedroom tax, look at the issues people are facing in terms of welfare reform, there's a lot more we can do. And I know, looking at the casework we get, the pressure our housing department and other departments are under in that respect. So the key is what one-off funding, what could we do more with the money we have without putting the reserves at risk, because this is addition to what you've already done. Every authority, both administrations before you and the administration that you're in now, have sought value for money and sought savings. That's a factor of life in local government. The point is what you do with the money that matters. So, when I see here that homelessness has made a favourable variation of £52,300, I ask what more on homelessness can we do with that money if we're making that level of variation? Where is the CAB support? They didn't get what they asked for. They got a reduction. They needed more. They didn't get what they asked for. And when it comes to supporting people in the issues that we're raising, this highlights to me the importance of this debate that we are going to have about what this council does on the supporting people issues. For example, when the Refuge could possibly be looking, Women's Refuge could possibly be looking at losing bed spaces, when May Place is facing a budget cut. Those sorts of issues that affect the vulnerable residents in our borough need to be very carefully thought through. So when we have a variation like this, what we do with it, rather than just simply putting it into the reserves or in the way that you've described, is important. Where is the social side, the thought through that goes on this variance, not just the financial bit, as you've described? So, Cabinet, when you think this through, and when you take this decision and recognise this, I guess our questions here and throughout the rest of this year is going to be, what are you doing to meet those issues that we've highlighted, you've highlighted yourselves in other meetings, that really do impact on our residents when we're making this level of variation set against, and I go back to what I said right at the top of my comments, what one of your own colleagues have said, that you have cut and cut and cut, and now you are cutting into the bone of this council's services.
Thank you very much. I don't know if there's any response to be made to that. Well, I think it was a statement, wasn't it? And so I think you raise a number. All right, make a comment. I think you raised a lot of interesting points, and certainly those are the issues which we would naturally want to look at. I don't think one particular group has a monopoly on concern for the people of this borough. I think we all share that view, and that if there are things which can be done, and at the same time secure the long-term financial stability of this council, which is important as well, then they should be done. But there will always be a balance in drawing on those things, and we need to look at each one. And I think it would be totally the wrong impression to give that we have an underspend of 1.8 million, which is actually less than 2% of the overall budget, and to actually get your spending to within 98% of the overall budget is a pretty good result, actually. But nevertheless, to say, whoopee, we've got all this money, let's go out and spend it, would be totally the wrong thing to do. If we have money that is available that we can use in the right directions, then it should certainly be spent in those directions. But we have to be mindful that we have not just this year, but next year and certainly in the years thereafter, considerable holes in our finances, as does the whole of local government finance. And we have to start making preparations now to ensure that we don't run ourselves into difficulty at that time, because we were profligate with a short-term gain that was unexpected. So, members, if you're happy, are we happy to just refer this to full council? Yeah. And then, if you would excuse us, Councillor Parker, I haven't got any more surprise speakers on any other papers this evening. I apologise for that, but it never turned up on mine. We'll just knock the capital, the Treasury Management Annual Report on the head, because in fact, I want not really, since this actually just reports on the asset management side of the business. This is paper D, item 9. This reports on stuff which has already been discussed significantly at Cabinet. We've seen the new asset management policies brought into place in reaction to the underperformance that we've seen because of the markets over the last year. That's now in place. We identified the problem early, we've taken the appropriate action, and we're now well placed to see ourselves move forward. This again will go to full council, and therefore, I think we could take that as noted, well, recommended, agreed to recommend to full council. Which then enables us to, as we dot around here, to move to item 11, which, if my spies are correct, tells me that Councillor Parker wishes to speak on paper F. Now, Councillor Parker, I have to ask you, since this contains a confidential appendix, are you intending to refer to the confidential appendix, in which case we'll have to go into closed session, and I then try and reorder the agenda yet again, but I guess by the fact you're making yourself at home down there, you don't intend to. No. Thank you very much. Good. Yep. Okay, fine. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it has to be noted that our partners in the Basingview regeneration news made a number of assumptions about the contractor's method of working and pricing, which the contracting market has not been prepared to accept, and as a result brought about higher costs, further compounded by a sharp increase in construction inflation. However, reading the report and the detail provided by officers, it also has to be, I think, accepted that we need to retain faith with our partners, and I think we've got to take a view in relation to the final objectives in Basingview. And I think the paper clearly makes the point that this development has attracted two major brands, retail brands, into the town, and it states the case of the increased revenue to the borough on an annual basis, which I think in itself negates the regrettable lower figure that we are having to accept as a local authority with regard to our interest in the land. So you may find surprisingly, I sit here this evening and I support the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. You're beginning to get a track record for doing this on occasions. I hope it's not too embarrassing for you. Since I deprived him of his moment of glory a bit earlier on, I am going to ask Councillor Isaac to respond to you. You might want to stay there for a second.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, the additional costs were regrettable, and we have made our views clear to our partners on that. We're disappointed. But Councillor Parker, I think you're right actually, and one has to come to a view about the bigger picture here, and there'll be lessons learned from this, but fundamentally we're going to achieve delivery of, as you say, two major brands to the town. When contracts become unconditional, the risk will then fully pass to Muse and the contractor. And we are obtaining value for the site. It's not as much as we had originally been advised could be available, but it's marginally under, and it's a result for us. As far as the paper is concerned, what this paper is doing, just to introduce it, is to update on it's an update on the disposal of the land at Basingview for the development of the new John Lewis at home and Waitrose store, and it's an updated financial forecast of the sum that would be payable to the council for the site. I'm not going to go through all the background because that's all in the paper, but the recommendations of the officers have been supported by the external consultants, both in terms of the tender process by Muse, and also in relation to the values that have been obtained in relation to the disposal of the completed building on a 150-year lease to John Lewis Partnership, and also external valuer support to the land payment at marginally less than best consideration because of those wider economic and social benefits that you highlighted. I'm not going to say anything more than that. I do recommend this to Cabinet.
Thank you very much. Members, any other members, anything else to add? Because otherwise I think what we have here, it may not be as good a deal as we'd originally hoped financially in terms of income to the council, but it's still a sizable chunk of money nevertheless coming in to us, and it gets two jolly good shops into the centre of the town, which will no doubt attract lots of other shoppers to come into the town and lead to the revitalisation of the whole area, and of course of Basingview itself. So it's a good deal. So, Councillor, did you have another question? I thought you were just waving at me. So.
Not waving at you, Chair. I was just going to ask and invite the Cabinet member if you would care to thank me for my support.
I'm delighted to have your support, Councillor Parker, particularly given our earlier exchange, when I think actually what I said may have been misconstrued, and I was going to speak to you afterwards. I think I'm sorry to say no more.
It's lovely between the two of you. I mean, there are limits, chaps.
Reputation alone.
Yes, quite. And from everybody's, I think. Right, so just to draw your attention, what we are doing is we're agreeing the land receipt. We are noting the changes in costs. We are agreeing the conditional sale contract becoming unconditional. We are agreeing for the disposal of the land being at undervalue for the purposes of section 123, but that is given the overall economic and social benefits to the town and positive impact of the scheme, which we've just been talking about. And finally, we're agreeing that the strategic project manager, in consultation with the head of resources and head of legal and democratic services, will be given the delegated authority to progress the required legal documentation in consultation with the portfolio holder, covering the supplemental agreement, head lease and agreement for lease, all of them becoming unconditional in accordance with the financial terms of the report. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Good. Thank you. Then, finally, we will go back to what was allegedly the first... Oh, no, we'll actually go back to item 6.
Yes.
Right, which is to appoint members to the executive committees. Firstly, to the Basingstoke Executive Committee, which needs to be Basingstoke, the Basingview Executive Committee, which should comprise 4 members of cabinet, excluding the portfolio holder for planning, who gets let off yet again. The current membership is Councillor John Wardener, Eachus, Isett, and Osselton. Are we continuing on that basis?
Agreed.
Agreed. And then the Manydown Executive Committee, which has to be 3 members of cabinet, excluding the leader and the portfolio holder for planning, so we can go off into the sunset together. Currently is Councillor John Warden and Councillor Isett and Councillor Mrs. Osselton.
Agreed.
Agreed? Yeah. Good. Right. Then the last item on our agenda for this evening is item 7, the merger of the community safety partnerships, which is a recommendation from the deputy leader and cabinet member for strategy and well, it is actually and community safety, but we'll sort that out in the end one day.
Yes, then I'd have the longest name and the longest title, so I might leave that one. Thank you, Leader. This proposal is the combination of much work over a number of years. To put it in context for members and the public, a shared community safety service known as Safer North Hampshire became effective on 1st of November 2012. Safer North Hampshire focuses on dealing with antisocial behaviour and managing intervention programmes for offenders, with a particular focus on reducing repeat victimisation and repeat offending. The work to date has actually delivered a reduction in crime of 4% in the last year in this borough, and the shared service arrangements at the officer level are working very well. This paper brings forward the next step in that shared arrangement. Under the Crime and Disorder Act 1998, the Police and Crime Commissioner, and therefore the Act was amended, can merge community safety partnerships which provide the governance for community safety at council level, where it is in the interest of one or more of the following: reducing crime and disorder, reducing reoffending, and combating the misuse of drugs, alcohol, and other substances. This proposal to merge the 3 community safety partnerships would be, in my opinion, in the interest of all of these criteria. The council will continue to be represented at the combined community safety partnership, and the community safety manager across North Hampshire acts as lead officer for each authority. I believe that this is a robust proposal. It ensures that we are working effectively with colleagues in other districts. It ensures that we are leading the way in Hampshire in terms of dealing with crime. Crime knows no boundaries by local government or any other standard, and it's therefore important we're working with partners. Therefore, I'm pleased to move the recommendation as stated in section 2, including a recommendation to council.
Thank you. Any comments anybody wishes to make? If not, I'll just add my own personal postscript to this, which is since I originally started this some 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, it's taken that length of time to get it to where it is today. It still has a little way to go because the other councils have to pass similar recommendations, but it is a recommendation which is wholly supported by the police and our other statutory fellow members of the CSP, so the fire service, probation, etc. I think it does really lay the basis for us a significant step further in securing community safety right the way across North Hampshire, building on an already good base. And I'm very pleased to see it finally coming to fruition. So if we're all agreed on this, we are, then I think we can draw the meeting to a close at 8:20.